It signals that the Israeli state is willing to break norms of discretion for psychological impact. Visibility is not free. It invites reciprocal action, legal complaint, escalation framing, and causes future incidents to be treated as part of a declared campaign rather than isolated events. And that's an exposure that's now lodged in the public record. Donald Trump's intervention fits the same pattern. Trump's an amplifier. That's a kind word for him, isn't it? When he frames potential strikes as protection of protesters and encourages seizure of institutions, he turns his loud mouth into implicit pressure, into explicit threat. And that makes it harder for the US to claim that any future escalation is either reluctant or defensive, because the effect is that the US is now publicly associated with the destabilization rhetoric in a way that adversaries can readily cite, and yet their allies have to try and explain. And that burden now sits on all of them. There's a habit in Western politics of treating words as less real than bombs. In foreign policy, rhetoric is part of the toolkit, isn't it? When rhetoric comes from a US president, it's not merely performance, it's a piece of state power, because it shapes what others do in response. Iran has treated it as such by escalating to the UN, because the UN record functions as a barrier to later denial. Once a state files such a complaint, it creates pressure on others to decide whether they treat the behaviour as acceptable. That diplomatic terrain now constrains future moves. The Iranian state has responded by treating unrest as something occurring under external pressure rather than as a purely domestic challenge. Once external actors publicly encourage unrest, the state is rational to assume further escalation might follow.